Hey, this is Passy from Passy's World of ICT, the guy with the white hat, with another Python lesson. And this is one we've been wanting to do for a while. This is the homework excuser. Because as a teacher, I've heard so many pathetic excuses for people not doing their homework over the years that we thought we'd make a little application which could generate an excuse for you. So the homework excuser program. Now, the main purpose of learning is not to make the homework excuser. That'll be a bit of fun, but we want to learn how to read an external text file into our Python program, and as we read it in, we want to put it into an array in memory so that we can process it. So we're going to build this program which will randomly supply a student with an excuse for not doing their homework, and they can try that out on their teachers and parents and see if some of these excuses work. Some of them are from the internet, some of them I actually made up myself based on ideas I'd heard from students. So here we go. It's going to say the homework excuser did not do your homework. Don't worry, we are here to help. That's what this app's about, all about helping. Do you want to get a homework excuse? Sure do, yes. It fell in the sink and got sucked down the drain. Okay, well that sounds believable. It fell on the stove and caught fire. Could happen. My brother used it in a paper eating competition. Not too sure about that one. My psycho mum cut it up to make paper dolls, because if you've seen those old movies, the people who were going nuts were sitting there making paper dolls or something like that. Anyway, that's the idea of the program, and we'll show you it running just quickly okay, so just hang on a minute. All right, so here's the homework excuser program running in Python. So we say yes, and it says my dad accidentally mailed it to China. My mum put it in the recycle bin. We can type YES for yes if we want to. The dog buried it somewhere in the garden. Speaking of the dog, actually, he's here while I'm making the video because I can't put him outside because the weather's bad. So I'm hoping he's going to keep being a good boy and keep being quiet. So we found an excuse. The dog buried it somewhere in the garden. That will do. And we press the Enter key to exit the program. Okay, so the first step is to use Windows Notepad app, because if you wonder where all those excuses came from, we type them into a file. So just like starting Word or PowerPoint, you can start up this application called Notepad that looks like an N for its symbol, and then you're able to type these in. It's just a plain text editor. So if you're on a different type of machine like an Apple, you can probably download Notepad++ and use that as your plain text editor. You don't want to use a word processor. It needs to be a plain text editor. So we've put all of our excuses in there. And if you want to get out of having to type them all in, get the downloads for this lesson, because we'll give you this file for free as part of the downloads. And there's even some bonus extra excuses in there as well. All right, now you need to make sure if you're making that file or adding to it some more excuses that you end it right here at the end of the sentence. Don't press enter and have blank lines underneath, because that will load blank items into the array. So it's got to make sure it just ends there, and don't press enter when you get to the last line, or backspace back so you're just right here at the end of the last item in the array. That's kind of important. So our program's going to read this file in line by line. So it'll read my dad used it to test the paper shredder, and then it's going to put that in the array. Then it'll be in a loop, so it'll read the next line. It blew out the car window coming to school, and it will put that in an array. Okay, so how do we get it into array? Right, there's our file. And how do we read it in? Well, to read it in, you actually use this thing called with open, and that will create a loop that will actually read through all of the file line by line until it reaches the end and can't go any further. So we say with open. Now then we need the name of the file. Now this one we've saved as homeworkexcuses.txt. That's another important thing. Make sure you save it as a .txt file, not as a .doc or anything else. It has to be .txt. So you can put that in quotes, the name of the file. That's as input file. That's our input file. And then this bit here for line in input file. So for that input file, homework excuses, for every line in there, we're going to have this array set up. We see we've defined it here, excuses array. and we're going to put each of those lines in the array and keep adding them. So the array will end up looking just like this, except everything's going to be hidden away in memory, okay, and we won't be able to see it. Now that's only really half the story. When you're dealing with files, you have to always check that the file exists, because if someone's typed this in homework excuse and didn't put the S on the end, or if that file, if you haven't copied that into the same folder as your program, then you'll get a program crash. But we need to be able to do code to avoid that. So we do this little test to see if the file's there and it can be found in the same folder as your program. That's really important. You've got to copy it into the same folder your program's in. And if it's not found, we're not going to crash. It'll actually give this error message. And we show you how to do that in the step-by-step PDF. All right, so the learning objectives for this lesson are to create a simple text input file using Windows Notepad, how we're going to read it in to the Python program. We've already seen a little bit of that. How to place each line into the array in program memory, and we've actually already seen the code for that. How to make sure a file exists before trying to read it to avoid the program crash. That bit we haven't done. That's in the detailed PDF instructions coming up. How to generate a random index number. So we want to randomly pick one of those homework excuses. And then once we've got a random number, we can take that number, this is your lucky number, and go to that index number in the array and pull out that particular excuse. And we're going to review using a while loop. So you notice that they could keep typing yes and yes and yes to keep going to get more and more if they wanted to, more requests for data. So we learned how to do that actually in the rolling dice program, where it was, you know, how many, do you want to roll the dice? Yes. Do you want to roll the dice? Yes. It's that actual same code again. So we're reviewing that. We're reviewing using structured program with a main, and then we're going to have def subroutines as part of it. And we're going to use the agile methodology, and we're going to give you guys some pseudocode to work on for this program as well. Okay, so the challenge task, sorry, just checking what the dog's doing there. He's crawling around in his blanket doing something nuts. The challenge task for this lesson is to adapt the homework excuser program so that it can randomly select a horrible horoscope from an input file, horoscopes, and then display the results on the screen. So what's going to happen there is that, like in the homework excuser, they can keep asking for horoscopes. So we're going to have this file, horoscopes.txt, and again, you can get this with the downloads for the lesson. It's got all these horrible horoscopes. Murphy, stop making that noise. Oi! The dog. I've got to show you the dog, all right? So, Murphy, look. There he is. Can you see him? No, he's making some noise over there. Look at all his toys and all his junk everywhere. He's like a teenager. Like puppies at that age are really exactly like a teenager and misbehaved. Anyway, so you can get that file with the downloads, and the idea is that you're going to just use what you learned in the homework excuser, and this one will be horrible horoscopes. You will ask them what their star sign is, even though that's going to actually have no bearing on what the horoscope comes out as. So they can put in their star sign, and do you want a horoscope? Yes. The headache you get at 11 a.m. will last all day. Oh, that's not nice. Here is your horoscope prediction. The morning coffee will burn your tongue. Oh, I don't like any of these, so I'm going to press no. And oh, they're horrible horoscopes. That's an awful thing to be happening to me. And all of the things in there are things that have actually happened to Passy at some time. Just horrible things that happened on horribly unlucky days. So let's jump across to the detailed PDF and show you what's in there for when you get the downloads, and go through a bit more detail in this lesson. Okay, so this is the PDF, and it's like a chapter from a book, all right? We're maybe one day going to combine all these into a book, but not right now. So that's a preview of the program. You need that file, as we explained to you. And here is version 1 of the program, all right, where we're going to have a main subroutine, and that's going to load the excuses array. And then we just put a debug there. We want to print out everything in the array just to make sure that everything got loaded and we didn't miss out on the last record in the file, or maybe only loaded half of the file in. We need to do a little debug thing here, a temporary thing, just to print it out. So we've got a subroutine for that. So this is going to 2 separate subroutines. Then at the end, we have that good old input, press the enter key to exit the program, so that when we're running it in PY on the black screen, the Py executable, it'll hang around and won't suddenly disappear until we press the enter key and make it go away. So load excuses array, we've already seen that. So we need to make that a global variable. Excuses array equals square brackets. That's the standard way in Python to define your array. As you will have seen if you've done our previous lessons, you need to have done the dice rolling lesson, and you need to have done the arrays lesson on the pets in House 1. Murphy was actually one of the pets in those pictures. All right, so we've opened this loop here. We talked about what's going to happen there is it'll open up that homework excuses file, read it line by line, and put it in the array. But it's kind of stacked in the array, okay, in memory, and we can't check to see that everything got in there okay. So what we need to do is this other routine. We're going to print the array contents, and if you've done the hangman lesson, you would have learnt about this, how to unload an array and print it out. So we just we're going to work out the length of that array. So we just we're working out len of the excuses array and putting that in excuses array length, and we'll print that out so you can see it on the screen. We're going to just pick the fourth homework excuse in the array and see if that comes out all right. And then we're going to do the full list, do a loop to go through all the array up until we get to the near the end at excuses array length. So this will pull everything out of the array, make the current excuse what number we're up to, and then we can print out that current excuse. All right, so this is going to be part of the program, so you need to actually type all of this in as version 1 and run it. So pause the video now and type that in. Okay, so when you run it, this is what should happen. It should say length of excuses array equals 24. Now, it might be longer with the file we're going to give you in the downloads, because I think we've got about 30 excuses in there now. But it should match the number of lines that are in that text file. And we just decided to pick on the fourth one, which was that my psycho mum cut it up to make paper dolls. And then it's supposed to print out the full list. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. It did do number 4, the psycho mum, correctly. And it's got all these other ones, okay, that were in there. All right, down to the last one, and then press Enter key to exit the program. So it is printing out everything that was in the input file, and it's printing that out from the hidden array in memory. So therefore we can safely say that everything in the input file made it into the hidden array satisfactorily, which takes us on to homework excuser version 2. Now, when you read files, it's standard to just use code like this, and I got this code off Stack Overflow actually. And to show you why we need it, if we don't spell that input file name correctly, so take your version 1 file and just change the file name to be homework.txt instead of homeworkexcuses.txt. It's just homework.txt, which you do not have a file for. When you run it in your IDE, I need to change that. It says Python IDE. It will crash. So if you're in PyScripter or PyCharm or MU or whatever IDE you're using to write your programs in, it'll crash, and it'll tell you what line it's crashed on. It'll say file not found, error number 2, no such file in directory homework.txt. Which kind of tells you what went on, but it is a crash, and we always avoid crashes. It's not good to have programs crash. So how you avoid the crash is you have to take this bit of the code, which is in version 1 in load excuses array, and it's got to get modified so it looks like this. And what it's doing now is it's doing a try except IO error. So you'll always put this in when you're reading an input file. This is standard processing in any language. And if you do our VBNet course and you've done horrible horoscopes in that, you'll know about this try except it's kind of logic. So we try to open up the file to see if it's there. If we can open it up, we'll set file found equals true. If there's some sort of exception, there's going to be a program crash, we intercept it with this except IO error. So that line of code there will intercept Python from doing the crash, and instead Python will print out file not found, cannot run program, and we set file found equals false. And here we're going to press enter to exit the program because we haven't found it, so that's no good, so we might as well exit. Now, if the file was found, you should also close the file. So we should do an f.close because we're calling our file just the letter F to make it simple. So we should close the file. So you should always open files, do whatever you need to do with them, then close them again. Again, that's standard in any programming language. So this kind of try except and then do the last thing is kind of standard in all kind of languages. So, but this is how you code it exactly for Python. So you've got to get all that in, and then you only do the opening of the file if file found is exactly equal to true. Okay, so that should be homework excuses there, .txt. because homework text is going to cause the crash. That should be homework excuses. I'll have to fix that up in the PDF later on, all right? So that's how version 2 looks, and what I'll do is if you do have homework.txt, actually leave it as homework.txt because we need to test it to see what happens that it intercepts the crash. So leave it as homework.txt, run it, and you'll find that it says file not found, cannot run program, press enter to exit. So it hasn't done a crash, it's just put message out to us telling us that the file's not found, all right? So that's really good. So just remember to change it back to homeworkexcuses.txt because that's the right one we need to have. And when we run it with that correct name, we need to check, of course, does the program still work? And yes, it does work. It still prints out all of those excuses from the input file which got loaded into the array. So that's version 2 done and dusted. Get the downloads if you need to see that in more detail. Version 3, we're going to remove that debug print. So we've checked out the file, we've checked out what for catering for if it's not found, how to make it not crash, but instead just give us a nice little file not found message printed out to us, to the user. So now we can get rid of this debug print array content. So this code here, which is in version 2, just delete that out and delete the whole subroutine out that was doing the debug print array contents because we don't need that anymore and we're not going to do it. All right, and then you should just see that runs and you just get press enter key to exit program. So it has loaded up the array in memory, but of course we don't see anything when that happens. So just see the start of the program and the end where we press any enter key. Now we're ready to get user input. All right, so we're going to print out an introduction to the program as well. So I need some print statements there, the homework excuser and these lines here. So you get that typed in. So just make some spaces in def main and put that in. And when we run it, it's printing out all that stuff. So that is really good. That's working. So remember, we're doing agile, just add a little bit in, test it, make sure it's working, then go on to the next bit. Don't put giant slabs in and then do a test and have 5 different things wrong and you're looking all around in a big program to find them. Just do little bits and test them bit by bit. Now, when we did the dice rolls program, so you're supposed to have done the rolling dice program lesson before this one, remember we had this thing while do more rolls equals true, and we let the player put Y or big Y, upper Y, or lowercase y, or yes, or all lowercase yes, or all uppercase yes. We allowed all of those things to be entered, and if they're entered, we went on to roll the dice, okay? Else, if they hadn't put in any of those things, we assume they want to stop, so we just ended the program. So we're just going to use that same program, that same sort of while loop so that the user can keep saying yes and keep getting more and more things out of the program for our homework excuser. So in this def main, after where we put those prints, you're going to add in all this code here, which is going to take care of them being able to get multiple excuses. They can just keep asking for homework excuses by typing any of these things in here. Now, we haven't written the excuses bit, so just put print stars here, get excuse subroutine program not written yet. So that's where it will be going off to do it, but it's not going to do it at the moment. So when you do it, it says, did not do your homework. Do you want to get an excuse? Yes. Excuse subroutine code not written yet, so that's all good. And just you could say yes again and get that same message, and yes again and get that. And then when you're ready, you say no, and it just stops the program and we can end it. All right, now finishing off the program. With the skills you've got from the lessons we've done already on arrays, like you did the arrays and lists lesson that had all the pets in their cages and processing starting at index 0, then index 1 and 2 and 3 and so on. Should have done the dice rolling one, and ideally you would have done Hangman as well, okay? Hangman was a really big program, so maybe didn't get that lesson finished. But ideally you would have done those 3, and you should now be able to take the pseudocode we're going to give you and finish off the homework excuser program. So these parts in black, this is the pseudocode for what we've already written. So I've already loaded the excuses array in that separate subroutine. We've already printed out the introduction. We've got this need an excuse equals true. I've written that while loop so the user can keep sort of requesting to get more excuses, and if they don't need an excuse anymore, we just exit from the program. And we've loaded the excuses array. We've already written all of that code, so you've got all of that in version 3. What you need to do in version 4 is, if the answer is yes, instead of printing out that stars message that you haven't written it yet, you need to put in a subroutine get homework excuse. Now that hasn't been written in Python code. You'll have to fix that up so it's Python compatible. But that's the idea. We're going to the get homework excuse there. And what the get homework excuse needs to do is it needs to generate a random number between 0 and array length -1. Now generating random numbers, if you don't know how to do the random.randint stuff, go back to the dice rolling program where we were making numbers between 1 and 6 to simulate the rolling of the dice. So go back to there and look that up so you can find out how to do it. And then we use the random value to actually access the excuses array and pick out that particular number excuse. Okay, so we set our homework excuse equal to that particular numbered excuse from the array. We just print out, here's a good excuse to use, and then we print whatever homework excuse we happen to get out of the array with this previous line of code. All right, so that's a challenge for you to finish that off, and you should have the skills to do it. Now, here's a sample program to help you because there are two ways. If you've done the Hangman program, at the very last step of that where we were randomly selecting a word to be the mystery word, you would have noticed that we use this special one line of Python which randomly got us something out of the array. So that's kind of method 2. And method 1 is kind of this method that would work in any programming language where you make your own random number and you use that random number as the index, okay, to get it yourself. So there's two ways of doing it. So this little program should help you with what you have to do. So we've just got a names array here, Bill, Bob, Jessica, and Tammy Sue. And we're saying get random name method 1 and there's get random name method 2. All right, so method 1 is the method that would work in any sort of language. You just set the maximum index number in that array to be the length of the array -1. You have to do the -1, remember, because the computer starts counting at 0, not at 1. And we've been through that before in previous lessons. And so you get your random index number with the random.randomInt 0 to that maximum index number. You want something between 0 and that last index in the array. Then we set the random name to equal what that random number was we came up with out of this names array, okay? So that's one way to do it. The second way is the way you would have seen if you've done the Python Hangman program lesson, and that one is that you just have to do random name is just a random.choice brackets from the names array. All right, so you probably want to do this one because it's so easy. It's just one line of code. Now this is great because it's built into Python and this works in Python, but you can't go doing that in other programming languages. In other programming languages, this kind of first principles method here, which looks a bit more complicated and takes 3 lines instead of 1, that will kind of work in any language as long as you translate it properly into that language. So this one, use it by all means because we're doing Python. Random name equals just get a random choice out of that names array. So it'll randomly pick Bob, or maybe their random choice will be Jessica. All right, so there's 2 ways here. And when you run that little program, what should happen is, we didn't put a run results down for it. Okay. What should happen is it should print out one of these names, okay? So we'll see if we can find that program and just show it to you quickly, all right? Okay, so when we run that program, it's a little bit boring. Just get person method 1 is selected as Tammy Sue, and the person method 2 randomly selected was Jessica, all right? And if we run it again, we might get other people like Bob and Bill. Okay, so that will help you out with doing that challenge of finishing the program. Okay, now while you're doing that, when you get on to doing the homework excuses, there will be a little problem on the last excuse. So if the final excuse, which in the example one here is my dad ran over the lawnmower, it won't make a space here between there. And that's because you're at the last item of the array. Because remember how we stopped the cursor, how we stopped it when we made the notepad file right at the very end? That means it doesn't have an enter carriage return on the file. It's a technical thing. So we've got to have this thing, if random excuse index number happens to equal the maximum index number, we just print a blank line. All right, so that's just to make it absolutely pretty and perfect so that all the excuses look the same. That might be one little fix you need to do when you test that program. All right, so the challenge task is horrible horoscopes. And what that does is it's the same idea. You have an input file here with all these horrible horoscopes, okay? And you're going to read that into an array and then randomly pick one of those to print out for the person's horoscope. So it's very similar. You should be able to almost just take, save a copy of your homework excuser program and make changes to it so that it will do this horrible horoscopes instead. And the additional thing is you need an input statement to ask them what is their star sign, even though the star sign actually has no bearing at all on the horoscope that they get. Okay, so that's it. That will be the lesson for you. All right, so just remember there is our full Python program course at PassyWorldOfICT.com, and you just click on the Python tab up the top, which will take you to the Python page, and you can scroll down and see those lessons and find the dice rolling one, which maybe you should have done, and the lists and arrays one, which you need to have done if you've been having trouble with the work we're doing here. So that is the course, and you should do those lessons in order because they each build on top of each other, as people who have been doing the course will realize. So thanks for watching. Give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, and thankfully I don't know where the dog is. I hope he's not just tearing something apart in the other room. That's the risk you take being a YouTuber. And subscribe to our channel because every week or so we're bringing out new videos. Now, there might not be a Python one for a little while because we really need to get on to going back to making VBNet programs. So the next one might be VBNet, it might be Python, not sure, but there's going to be a few VBNet ones coming, so, and less Python. All right, but there will be Python in the future, so subscribe and we'll see you in the next lesson.